The Essays of Montaigne. Book 1, Chapter 1. By divers means, a like end is attained. The most usual way to soften the hearts of those we have offended, when, having vengeance in their hand, they hold us at their mercy, is to move them by submission to commiseration and pity. Defiance, courage, and resolution, means altogether different, have sometimes served the same purpose. Edward, Prince of Wales, who so long governed Arguin, a personage whose qualities and whose fortune show many notable characteristics of greatness, having been much harmed by the Limousins, and having taken their city by force, could not be stayed by the outcries of the people, and of the women and children given over to slaughter, crying for mercy, and throwing themselves at his feet, until, as he went on through the city, he became aware of 3 French gentlemen who, with incredible valor, withstood alone the power of his victorious army. The sight of such notable courage, and the respect that it aroused primarily, blunted the edge of his wrath, and beginning with those 3, he showed mercy to all the other inhabitants of the city. Scanderbeg, Prince of Epirus, pursuing one of his own soldiers, to put him to death, this soldier, having tried by every sort of humble expression and supplication to soften him, determined, in the last extremity, to await him, sword in hand. This action of his cut short his master's rage, who, seeing him play so honorable a part, received him into favor. The incident may suffer another interpretation by those who have not heard of this prince's prodigious strength and bravery. The Emperor Conrad III, having besieged Guelph, Duke of Bavaria, would vouchsafe no milder conditions, whatever base and dastardly terms of satisfaction were offered him, than to permit the gentlewomen who were besieged with the Duke to go forth on foot, their honor secure, with whatever they could carry on their persons. And they, in greatness of heart, bethought them to take upon their backs their husbands and children, and the Duke himself. The Emperor received such keen delight from witnessing the adroitness of their courage, that he wept for joy, and quenched the bitterness of the mortal and capital hatred he had cherished against the Duke, and thenceforth treated him and his courteously. Either of these methods would readily prevail with me, for I have a wonderful propensity toward mercy and mildness, so much so that I believe I should more instinctively yield to compassion than to admiration. Yet pity is a vicious sentiment. According to the Stoics, they would have us succor the afflicted, but not be bowed down in sympathy with them. Now these examples seem to me the more apt, inasmuch as we see in them these souls, when assailed and tested in these 2 ways, encounter the one without being shaken, and bend under the other. It may be said that to give way to commiseration and pity is the sign of an easygoing, kindly, and weak disposition, whence it happens that the feebler natures, as those of women and children and the common people, are most subject to this, but that, holding tears and prayers in contempt, to yield only to veneration for the sacred impersonation of courage, is the sign of a strong and inflexible soul, which holds in admiration and honor virile and unyielding vigor. However, in less generous souls, astonishment and admiration may give birth to a like effect. Witness the Thebans, who, having brought a capital charge against their captains for continuing to hold office beyond the time prescribed and preordained, absolved, not without much ado, Pelopidas, who bowed his head beneath the weight of such charges, and employed only entreaties and supplications to save himself. Whereas, on the contrary, in regard to Epaminondas, who eloquently recounted his achievements and taunted the people with them in a haughty and arrogant fashion, they had not the courage even to take the ballots in their hands, and the meeting broke up, greatly praising the high-heartedness of this personage. Dionysius the Elder, having taken the city of Regio after extreme delays and difficulties, and therein the commander, Phaeton, a man of great worth, who had very obstinately defended the city, determined to make use of the occasion for an example of terrible vengeance. First, he told him that, on the day before, he had caused his son and all his kindred to be drowned, to which Phaeton replied only that they were more fortunate than himself by 1 day. Then he caused him to be stripped and seized by the executioners, and dragged through the city, scourging him most ignominiously and cruelly all the while, and in addition, heaping violent and contumelious words upon him. But his courage never failed, or his self-possession. But, on the contrary, with steadfast mien, he continually declared in a loud voice the honorable and glorious cause of his death, that he would not surrender his country into the hands of a tyrant, whom he threatened with speedy punishment by the gods. Dionysius, reading in the eyes of his soldiers that, instead of being roused by the defiant words of this conquered foe in scorn of their leader and his triumph, they were becoming softened by their amazement at such rare courage, and were on the point of mutiny, and even of snatching Phaeton from the hands of the officials, consequently caused his martyrdom to come to an end, and sent him away secretly to be drowned in the sea. Truly man is a marvelously volatile, various, and wavering creature. It is difficult to base a stable and uniform judgment upon him. Look at Pompey, who pardoned the whole city of Mamertines, against which he was greatly roused, in view of the courage and magnanimity of the citizen Zeno, who took upon himself alone the public misdeed, and sought no other favor than to bear alone the penalty of it. And Sylla's host, having displayed the like courage in the city of Perugia, gained nothing thereby, either for himself or for others. And, directly contrary to my first examples, the bravest of men, and the most merciful to the vanquished, Alexander, having forced the city of Gaza, after many great difficulties, found there Bitias, who was in command, of whose valor he had seen marvelous proofs during the siege, all covered with blood and wounds, still fighting in the midst of a number of Macedonians, who attacked him pell-mell. Alexander, irritated by so costly a victory, for among other mischances, he had received 2 fresh wounds on his body, cried out to him, "You shall not die as you have desired, Bitias. Be assured that you must suffer every kind of torture that can be invented for a prisoner." The other, with a countenance not only undismayed, but arrogant and haughty, said no word in reply to these threats. Whereupon Alexander, seeing his proud and persistent silence, cried, "Bends he not the knee? Has he no sound of entreaty escaped him? Truly I will conquer this silence, and if I cannot extort a word from him, at least I will extort groans." And, his wrath becoming frenzy, he ordered that his heels should be pierced, and a cord passed through them, and had him dragged thus, alive, torn, and dismembered, at the tail of a cart. May it be that courage was so natural and common a thing to him Alexander that, because he did not wonder at it, he thought less highly of it, or that he considered it to belong so peculiarly to himself, that he could not endure seeing it at this height in another, without the irritation of an emotion of envy, or that the natural impetuosity of his wrath could not brook opposition. In truth, if it could have been checked, we must believe that it would have been so in the capture and desolation of the city of Thebes, upon seeing so many valiant men destroyed, and having no longer any means of defense, cruelly put to the sword. Nor was one seen who did not strive on to his last breath to avenge himself, and with the weapons of despair to console his own death with the death of some enemy. The carnage lasted till the last drop of blood was shed, and stopped only at those who were unarmed old men, women, and children, to make of them 30,000 slaves.